So things are going to accelerate much faster. I don't think that it means that they're going to retire 90% of the workforce. They're going to move 10 times faster. And that requires an understanding of how the world is going to look like, how fast products are going to be pushed out there, how personalized your experience is going to be in this world.
Hello, my dear friends, listeners to podcast Ventures from the Valley. This is another episode now, which you will see soon and listen to this episode. We have an exciting person, Mor Assia, who is a high-tech entrepreneur, very well known, not only in Israel, but across the globe. She was working in a variety of different companies, large and largest tech companies for over 10 years, was in charge of global corporate strategies, M&A activities, and technological pivots. Back in 2013, she founded what is known the company iAngels, and she co-founded it with Shelly Moyal. And so far, she's running this business for over 12 years. Mor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start with a little bit of your background. You and I met first when you were 2 years in this business back in 2015. And I was really fascinated to see this, uniquely positioned Israeli entrepreneurial family. And we will speak about your family members because each of them deserves a separate podcast for sure. But this podcast is all about yourself. So maybe we can start with your career path. What formed your character? Why did you decide to do tech at all? I mean, it was like common, everyone was going there, or you were like exceptional. So maybe a little bit of that, please.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised the majority of the time in Israel. Even as a young child, I was always kind of very strong in mathematics. And this was something that came very easy to me. And I think, by the way, you were asking if it was the path less traveled or more common. And at least for girls, it's definitely, I can say it was the path less traveled. I was always, in minority and sometimes the only one in many of, the circles, or I want to say the academic circles that I was engaged in. But I did grow up in a high-tech home. My father was part of the management team at Amdocs at the time. Mm-hmm. He actually joined the company when it was still a startup. It was called Orlovski. And I had the privilege of having the front row seat to definitely one of the very early, at the time, successes out of Israel. So it's a company that provides software and services primarily for the telecommunications industry. The flagship product was billing software that was sold to like the Bells, the Bell Pentics, and the AT&Ts of the world. And actually relocated with my family when I was 10 to the US and stayed a couple of years there as part of my father's role there. And I think it definitely added to kind of my international experience or my international anticipation. Like it's definitely something that you don't really realize as a young child, the gift of being able to completely move and mind you, this was before cell phones and Facebook and WhatsApp and whatever. And just like completely move to a different place, different culture, different language, and get acclimatized in a whole new way, kind of rebuild yourself or prove yourself and kind of have very thick skin. And you realize, the benefits of that move, I think much, much, much later in life. After a couple of years, I went back to Israel in high school.
How much time did you spend in New York City?
It was a little over 2 years.
2 years, okay.
I can say that I definitely, it's very timely to say it now, but when I was there, I also experienced a fire. So like in our neighborhood, there was a huge fire that set loose and burned down like 20 townhouses or whatever. And it's very timely because of everything that went on out in California. and people kind of, lose everything and you lose your house. And I was like in the middle of a relocation. I was relatively short in any event. So a lot of kind of like very interesting experiences, maybe again for another podcast. But I went back. I was in 8th grade. In Israel, you already choose a major when you're in high school. So I chose.
But you knew from the very beginning, right? I mean, obviously, like in your early childhood, that like you will become you will serve in the army, right? So it was like all in your kind of a DNA,
Yes.
right? So I mean, you
Yes.
knew that you have to prepare yourself for this, right? Or you were like some of these release families who were not going to be back. So were you
No. We were
preparing yourself for this service and like knowing
We were-
that you will end up in the army?
Yes, we definitely knew that we're going to come back. Again, when I was a child, we had the Gulf War in Israel. So we were like, also children that went through kind of like this experience of going to school with a gas mask with us. So all these like really interesting, I want to say, experiences from a very young age. We always knew that we're going to come back. It was supposed to be, it was capped at 3 years. So we stayed all, under. My father moved a little bit before us. So it was like basically around that time. But it wasn't as though that from a very young age, I was like, I need to study something that's going to be material for my army service. I wanted to study things that I excelled in and that were easy for me and I could get very, very high grades. And it was very intuitive for me. So I always was drawn to things that, I felt comfortable. And I never liked personally, studying literature or things that you need to kind of try to kind of overthink and write these huge essays and have opinion pieces and whatever. I always liked the fact that it was an equation, there's one answer, and you know how to get from A to B, and there's it's finite, and that's it. So you have the toolkit, you have the skills to get there, and my mind was, I guess, kind of jacked up in that way that it was always kind of very intuitive for me and very straightforward to me. So I decided to, go down that path because I just wanted things to be easy for me. And in high school, I chose physics, computer science, mathematics. And of course, at the time I was already bilingual. So I had the privilege of going to like an English speakers, native English speakers class. So already kind of do my finals in high school much earlier than everyone else, and kind of free time to do more in-depth courses and classes in the space that I chose. But again, I didn't necessarily know it from the get-go. I really remember when I was like in 10th grade or something, and I had to choose. And I sat down with my dad and I told him, and he's like, what about chemistry? I'm like, oh, I don't like the teacher. What about biology? No, I don't get it. It's like, it's too much.
That's how it happens. I mean, you either like a teacher and then you are all in, or you don't. It's just all about people.
Exactly. But it's true for anything. If you have a mentor, if you have someone that you're like, okay, this is a really, really smart guy. This is someone I want to sit in his class. Then it can happen from a very young age. And then you're like, I want to sit in that class. I can, I want to hear this guy speak. So that's how I chose. I was somewhat of an elimination and somewhat of what I felt like more comfortable in my own skin. And that really paved way for a very unique army service for me. So again, in Israel, everyone serves.
Did you serve in this one of those units? I mean, those famously known units, 8200, 8100. So you were one of those kids, right?
I was one of those few. And by the way, it's interesting to think about it, but 8200 is a very, very large unit. And there are like professional roles, but there are also supporting functions. And you have everything. You also have drivers there. So you have everything. So for me to have a professional role,
I mean, you mean not just the real drivers, but like cyber drivers, right? Who are like driving cyber trucks.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, in 8200, you have a variety of I want to say professions. It could be in algorithms, encryption, different types of sciences, telecommunications. So it's all very, very technology driven, and it's well known in Israel that a lot of the talent that then flows into the high-tech ecosystem are graduates of this unit. There are a handful of technological units. And this is really foundation and invaluable world-class education and experience that, founders can bring into the high-tech ecosystem and find ways to commercialize some of the challenges that they saw perhaps in their experiences. And this is something that really sets Israel apart, I think, from the rest of the world, because no one at that age receives that amount of responsibility and that amount of exposure to technology and to decision making with the top commanders of the units in a way that I was exposed to at 82. So
for those who do not know, so Israeli army has like this cyber defense/cyber defense program, right? And obviously every kid is serving, regardless of this is a man or a woman, all serve in the army. And they have like a 70 years history of people serving in the army, right? So they can choose like on big data, right? Because everyone is serving, and they may track a record of like 70 or more years of service. They can understand which kid is good in what kind of like profession, right? And army defines the profession pretty much, right? So many people who serve in army in a certain area, they continue to expand in this profession. So obviously the most prestigious in the world is this 81, 8200, right?
Yeah.
So where people
they call your teachers, they called up my teachers in high school, they interviewed them about me, they do background checks on your family, they do a lot of due diligence before they choose, and they also make you go through different types of qualifications and tests.
Tricky question. Obviously you don't know, but yes, what did your teacher tell to army officer when he or she was asked who is Mor?
I don't remember his exact words, but they did.
Obviously, you don't know the exact words, right? Because you were not informed. But imagine that your teacher is speaking about yourself. Well, so what kind of words he or she would use? What is this? Tell me who is Mor Assia by like eyes of your teacher speaking to an army officer.
It's if I have to say something short, then and this is something that my father repeated to me kind of like years later that he found out or whatever, that he probably would say that I'm definitely something special, definitely something different. Again,
in what sort of difference? What is different in you? I'm an army officer and you are a teacher of Mor now, but 20 years ago.
Many students, many friends of mine, they went to study theater, they went to study literature, they went to study even Bible, and there weren't many girls who chose physics. Out of like 500 children, it was almost 18-year-olds, right? Like that 12th graders, we graduated from the physics department less than 20 children. It was very, very small group. It was very, very difficult track, and I didn't have any friends there. So it's something that you need to really decide you want to do and commit to, because it's a lot of work and you don't have any friends there to be able to kind of excel and succeed in going through these programs and also not drop out in the middle. So I would say that it's, that it kind of speaks to someone's character that he chooses something like this. It's very difficult and very challenging without like buy-in of like his social circles. So I was always kind of like doing my thing. And I was also very much a perfectionist. So it's like every time I would go back home and like my father and my mother were like, okay, so how was the exam? Like shit, like I think,
you could have done better.
I didn't do well. I wasn't happy with myself. And then I would get like, I don't know, like a 94 or something. And then like my mom's like, whatever. She's like just full of it. But it's like I had like a lot in me on what I wanted, to do and how, I felt, if I was prepared or not prepared, or, if I were able to bring myself into the situation and do it in the way that I was happy with. So that was, I think, one thing. Another thing, I don't know that, again, if my teacher that was interviewed knew, but I used to argue with my teachers about everything. So I would get a grade and I would come and I would submit an appeal. I would say, no, I actually think I deserve more. And I could argue with them on a point.
You know, yeah.
So
I just sorry
was
for
very
interrupting you.
determined. I was very determined. I knew, like, from a very young age, this is what I think. This is like my worth. This is what, and I would give them all the explanation, and they would be exhausted even from the conversation. But it's like, no, this is what I think. This is what I think, and give me an extra assignment, whatever. This is the grade that I want to have in this class. I don't care. I'm going to do more work. I'm going to do. But I wasn't like a geeky kid. I wasn't a kid that used to study from rise to sunset. But I was very kind of determined. I was very efficient, and I was very I don't know. I knew how to manage my time, and I had other extracurricular activities. I used to dance ballet, so I was dancing every day in the studio. So I was doing other things as well. But I was one of those, I don't know, like something different.
I spoke to Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google at some point. Like it was like I think 10 years ago when I just moved to the Valley, and we met in a coffee shop with one of my friends who was like his good friend. And then he started saying, like, all of a sudden speaking about his family, because I'm from former Soviet Union, and he recognized my accent, and he started like asking where I'm from. And then he started telling about his childhood in Novosibirsk, in what is called Akademgorodok, which is like a city, like small suburb in Novosibirsk, where all these scientists were living. And his father was a scientist. And he said an interesting thing, that his father was like always very demanding to him. And because he was like in the best kind of school, this academic school, and he was his whole class was excellent in math and physics. When they were going to on all this, championships for like math and physics students, and they were bringing 18 medals out of 20, or 18 prizes out of 20. His dad was always mad. He was always saying, what the hell? I mean, why is it 18? There were 20 medals and you only won 18. I mean, you are not doing a good job. So it's like what is like shaping us. It's your father was probably okay, and my father was okay with 94 or 100. His father was absolutely not okay with that. But anyway, so my last
question. Definitely in an academic family. Like my father had a PhD in computer science, but he used to travel a ton. And I remember like the night before like my finals in physics, he came from like a trip. It was maybe like 12 at night. And he comes into my room, like, what's up? It's like, I have this exam tomorrow. I don't get something in electricity. He's like, okay, let me change. And then he sat with me for like 3 hours, and I got it. And then he says, okay, you're ready, go to bed. And I'm like, fine. And I didn't go to bed. And I was practicing till like maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to fall asleep in the middle of the exam. And, but it's amazing because he was on one hand, like constantly traveling, but on the other hand, very involved. And he's probably the only person that I could, come to with these like very elaborate questions. But I was never like a mathlete. I never used to, never used to go to these competitions. I just didn't have the time. It's just like the things that I decided to put my work and my mind into, those had to be, into a point where I felt good about it. But I never had the time to actually go on the debate team and go on like the mathletes and all these things. Like I never would volunteer for these things.
So what was your biggest dream back then? Do you remember like something, what was like taking your entire imagination? What did you dream about? What you were going to be?
So it's interesting because I grew up in a house where, my father was like a role model for me, and it was very corpy. And I remember even when I chose these like professions and even in high school and also through, my service, he used to tell me all the time, in high tech, like there's a glass ceiling for women, and you're going to see that if you decide to go down like my path, you're going to see that it's very, very difficult. And I told him, well, what are you talking about? By the time I get to your position, it's like in 20 years and 30 years, whatever, the world is going to be different, and it's probably not going to be an issue. And so I never thought to myself, that's going to be my challenge. I thought it's something of like the old era, and it's probably going to be different when I get there. And I also had like this like dance track that I really loved, like the, being part of like the arts and performing. it definitely brought me to a place where I had very strong presentation skills. I didn't have any stage fright or any problem like speaking my mind to people who are older, who are different, who had different feelings or different thoughts. So I think those two tracks definitely, shaped me. And I have to say that after I went through my entire journey and I got to like the biggest corporates, closest to decision makers, with the board and or management teams, I found that again, like it's true, and it was still very limiting for strong-minded women to be perceived as thought leaders and decision makers, and to be there. So there was, maybe it was higher up, but it was still there, that glass. I felt, and I think it's still something that I fight for women and that I mentor or entrepreneurs that I work with.
Interesting. Okay, so after fascinating years with the top tier companies like SAP, IBM, iAngels, you decided to start your own business, which is iAngels. So I guess that you were also inspired by Apple, a series of Apple inventions. iPhone, iPad, now it's like iAngels. So I can imagine that this was something like inspirational for you. So why and how did you decide doing this, and why this particular business? And many of your colleagues, I'm sure, and people you knew started, including your husband and some of other family members of yours, started their own companies. You did so, but it was not a product company. It was more an investment vehicle. So why was that a choice, and how this inspiration came in place?
Yeah. So again, I had a very elaborate journey in the corporate world. I did my bachelor's in mathematics and computer science at the Technion, and my master's in business administration at Columbia University. And I worked, as you mentioned, for many years at SAP, IBM in New York, and then Amdocs in Israel. And it was like a completely different I want to say era. Like everyone that was working with my father, it was like 20 years already since he had left. So it was something completely different, but I knew the organization from inside out. And I was working for this corporate world, and I loved it. I loved being in a place where you have so much resources, that you are on one hand a small part of something huge, but on the other hand, if you are an entrepreneur, which means that you're an entrepreneur that can innovate within large and complicated systems, you can really make a lot of impact, and you can really have a voice. And I loved it.
Did you really feel that in these large companies? Because I mean, you and I worked for IBM, for example. I was an IBM for many years. So did you really feel like you are important? Didn't you feel like you are like a small piece in a big machine where everything is moving, regardless of whether you are moving or not? No,
this was the first question I asked. The first question when I was recruited for IBM corporate strategy, I sat there in the first hour of orientation, and I told them, like, okay, great, we're going to sit here and we're going to define a strategy. We're going to decide what's going to happen. And then you need to take this huge ship and turn it around. And what happens is it's like the Titanic. It's like it doesn't turn fast enough. It doesn't move.
Yeah.
And even though you're like, you're in a position to make any decision, and they told me that's going to be your challenge. And I'm a problem solver, and I love challenges. And I think that I also have the ability to communicate what I need and what I want. And that sometimes was more difficult with some managers. Sometimes it was very, very well received. And I always used to tell them, if you're not going to let me do everything that I can bring to the table, everything that I can do, the organization is losing money on me. I can do a lot, but you need to let me. And if you constantly chop up my wings and you don't let me, bring that value to you, you're by definition losing money. And that's a decision that a manager has to make. And I think it definitely brought me to a point where
you already convinced me. You do whatever you want.
Definitely, it's not the same with every manager. And I do feel that at the last period that I spent at Amdocs, it was less of a case. And I did feel, that if I can't bring my value here, then I want to be all I can be outside of there and build my own company.
So you woke up one day in 2013 and just decided to start, right? Oh, why won't I start the company? Why won't I call it iAngels?
It was more.
Or there was something like more inspiring, no?
I think, by the way, when you ask any founder, I think ideation generally takes some time. You need to kind of think about it. And I'm a mathematician, so I like to kind of cover all the end scenarios and like really work and think about it a lot.
I will ask you this question. Our mutual friend, Uri Levine, who is the founder of Waze.
Yeah.
He wrote a famously known book, which I really like, and I like Uri a lot. Don't fall in love with solutions. Fall in love with problems. What problem did you fall in love with to start your own company?
So the problem, again, for us in Israel was that the early stage, on one hand, Israel is a very, I want to say, evolved investment ecosystem. You have all the building blocks. And we had like the angel investors, we had the acceleration programs, we had government support and systems, we had early stage investors, mid-tier, like we had the whole value chain. But with that said, personally, and again, and we'll talk about it later, but Yoni, my husband, and I have been together since we were 20. So we're both techies, both CS grads, and we're constantly kind of like thinking about the problems, right? What is the problem? We said, we have amazing deal flow. We know anyone who's starting anything because these guys went with the army. We sat with them in college. We know what they're working on. We know who's, the brightest of the brightest. And they're starting off like on this entrepreneurial journey. And we can't get involved because as young professionals or even as like small, tiny angel investors, like you add very little money to the pot.
So you could not be involved just because you could not sign a large check.
What we would do.
Although in Israel there are also it's known for its tech talent. It's known for its like academic talent. It is known for its entrepreneurial talent, but it is also known for really great angels, right? There are a bunch of really great angels out of Israel. So, but they can sign large checks because they made their fortune already. So you were speaking about those who want but can't make it because they could not sign checks.
We understand the tech. We have relationship with founders. By the way, at the time, there are a lot of like these super angels. So people who can sign $100,000, $200,000 checks. And sometimes it would be the entire round. There would be like these small angel rounds. Many companies would raise like $200,000, $300,000 at like $1 million post. You don't even see those rounds today. But that was like the real. I mean, it was very much a closed off garden of like this like boy club of super angels. And many of them are like fantastic people. We know and we're friends with many of them, but they're like, it's not, if you want to sign $200,000 checks and you want to have a 10 to 20 company portfolio, that already dictates, and that's net of taxes, already dictates what's the asset allocation for alternatives, early stage in Israel that these guys can put. This is large money. And we felt like all we could do is pinpoint to these guys where they should put their money. We would call up their guy and like, this is a really great guy. This is a really great company. You should invest there. And that's what we used to do all the time. And we would sit down on Shabbat dinner and say who founded what company and who got what investment from whom. We could not take part and like, but we had the deal flow, we had access, and we had data and information. So that was, I think, part of the problem. And we said, we want to invest in the top guys in Israel, and we want to do it in a way that's also bridging another gap or another challenge. A lot of international money, a lot of international investors have had a difficult time investing directly in Israel. Because either they felt they didn't get the same terms as like the base level or the people that came in at ground floor, or they felt that they only heard about it once across the Atlantic. So valuations are also becoming very high, and it was also kind of a mix of emotion, communication, culture that made this experience very difficult for direct investment. So
and the truth is that this is a club everywhere. I mean, there is no venture business in the world where it's not like club deals, by invitation only, right? I mean, you could not invest. I mean, some people think they can, but this is like waste of money and time to invest into something if you are not a member of a very privileged club, right? So you need to be a member.
It was before that this became more common. It was before Angelus syndicates. It was before, which again, they give the framework, the infrastructure, but they don't, apart from that, this is like the syndicator, that's his. Like we don't,
it's your choice. It's your choice. Yeah.
Exactly, your choice. And it's many, and it, by the way, Angelus at the time was very much about coming as like meet and greet. Anyone can put up their startup there. Anyone can invest. And there was very limited ability to actually vet these companies and do the work. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted to say, okay, this is Israel. We're good in Israel. We know everyone. We're going to highlight these deals. We're going to invest personally, but we're also going to invite people who are like-minded, that we don't need to explain why they need exposure to the asset class. We don't need to explain why Israel is interesting. They can invest into these deals, and together we're going to come in with a much more influence, much larger ticket. And that evolved to us investing over the years, $1 million, $2 million into deals, sitting on the boards, becoming a lot more involved, developing our own investment thesis and strategy, and really became the go-to and the eyes and the ears of a huge community of investors from all over the world to investing in Israel early stage tech. So that's what we built. And by the way, it was a product company, even from day one.
Interesting.
We built a product. Our platform is a product. We have an R&D team until today, from day one, because we built a product to be able to communicate and create a similar experience of what we're going through here in Israel throughout the due diligence process and the decision-making process, and to be able to communicate to someone who's sitting in Australia or someone who's sitting in Atlanta. That trusts us at the end of the day, but also provide a lot of data and granularity, information, and tools to learn about how to invest in this asset class in a way that's performance driven. And we were thinking about it in a way that this is going to be like the Goldman Sachs of angel investing, but it was product from day one.
That's interesting. So I would like to know more, and I'm sure my podcast listeners would like to know more about the product. Let me just describe your business for others, like in a nutshell. So it's an investment club, an investment vehicle, a fund, if you will, right? It's a venture fund. So you collect smaller checks, bigger checks from across the world, so people may invest into iAngels and leverage your unique position in Israel. And I can really testify that this is a very unique position. I think there is no one in Israel who may have better access to talent across so many different industries than iAngels. So maybe you can tell a little bit of how you share your responsibilities with Shelley, your co-founder. How did you split? Who is in charge of what? And how big is your team? How big is the fund now? So maybe just to give some metrics, that would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many investments been made so far?
Okay, so I'll start maybe with the numbers, because you asked a lot of questions that are numbers driven. So we've done over 120 investments in the last year. So we're considered today one of the most active. I think it's the second most active investor in Israel, based on
number one.
Number one is our crowd, but it's not. The analysis is looking at overall investments, and we're only focused on Israel, which I know our crowd also does investments outside of Israel. So I can't speak on their behalf, but we're definitely a very active investor, and we see ourselves as a lifetime investor because of the unique methodology of how we invest and the different diversity also amongst our investor community. We're able to really support companies from zero to hero, from seed to IPO, because we have investors that are very eager to invest in early stage, where it's like sometimes pre-product, pre-revenue. And we have investors who are looking to invest in more mature companies that already have a sustainable business model and are generating significant revenue. So
So
with
how
the model
early
that
you
we
can
built,
go?
we're able to invest really across the board.
How
Now,
early you can go?
Sorry?
Yeah, how early you can go? I mean, what's the earliest? So I'm like the first time founder. You know me well from like
Yeah.
my army service. You have some good references on me, but I only have like an idea. It's like ideation based. Are you able to invest in this type of companies? Are you like, is it like your mandate to go and put chat into like pre-seed stage, say?
So it's important to remember that Shelly and I were not hired for this role by an external fund. This is our fund. So from a
Yeah.
management perspective, we can do anything. But
And you do, like you have another appetite for this kind of stuff.
We have invested in companies pre-product, pre-revenue. I can tell you that it's definitely an evolution, and people experience it, I think, all over the world. There are cycles, and we're now in a different cycle. I think with the correction in the markets, people understand that if like the end game is going public, and now companies that are public and are not EBITDA positive are being penalized, and that's how they're going to be priced, then that trickles down all the way through all the rounds to the basic, seed stage. We need to calculate what that price point should be in order for us to go through all these rounds and all this dilution and the many years of execution to be able to make sure that my investors actually make returns. So we do all these calculations all the time. Yeah. And now with investment climate, I can tell you that we're much more interested in companies that actually have already a product or an initial product. Or some market validation. It could be with a design partner. It could be with an initial customer. We want to vet the premise of the business model. We want to be able to do due diligence. We are looking for people who left their old jobs and are committed to this venture. We're looking for companies that can grow fast and showcase how they can get to large scale without raising 3 rounds and going through 5 years to be able to get there. And that, I think, changes the narrative with each cycle. We've gone already through several cycles on what are the themes and what are the sectors that can be more interesting and more relevant in a specific vintage. I want to kind of catch like the few questions that you had before. We're managing $500 million today deployed. We're a team of 20 professionals. We're sitting in Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv.
Amazing place and amazing corpus.
Yes.
I really like it.
Yeah, and it's important also to say that we evolved as a startup company. Think again, for us being venture capitalists, but people who are coming from tech, from corporates, from finance world, which Shelly also complements, being operators. We're co-CEOs of our own company. We raised equity. We have employee retention programs. We have different types of skill set and talent within our teams and so we are really very different from like a classic venture capitalist. And we also, designed a product that we're constantly revisiting and building to add more value to our customers or to our investors. And also evolved as an investment house. So in the beginning, it was more along the lines of what you said, it was a co-investment business. But we also grew into more complex and advanced financial offerings. And in 2017, we launched our first fund that was a fund dedicated for digital assets. And this was at the highs of, the last bull run. And we had a lot of investors that said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to whitelist myself and take, dollars and move it to an exchange and into Ether and go on ICOs. And then I get the token back. And like they can't even manage that across themes and investigate where they should invest. So we created a dedicated fund that allows them to do it across narratives, the most important narratives. That fund exists today and it's doing amazingly well. We have fantastic investors and they're very, very happy. In 2019, we founded our first venture fund. So really for people who are more family offices, multifamily offices, semi-institutional investors and institutional investors that are looking for a full asset allocation strategy and follow-on strategy within like a single ticket. So we launched iAngels Ventures 1 in 2020, started investing. The fund was 55.5 million. It was doing only early stage. We did 23 investments. We have there a company IPO'd, a unicorn, and companies that are valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. So the fund is doing very well. And now we're raised and started investing out of Fund 2, so iAngels Ventures 2. And that lives alongside with our kind of global investment network that allows people to commit, for example, to the funds, but also support their legacy portfolio or do over allocation to a specific deal through our platform. So it's like, it's a lot.
Fundraising is mostly what private individuals whom you're fundraising from, corporates, institutional investors. What's the composition of your assets under management?
So in assets under management, it's predominantly ultra high net worth individuals, family offices, multifamily offices. I have to say this is a very unique asset class. We only onboard and welcome people who are accredited investors and have the ability to invest. Again, so it's a very unique kind of investor. With the funds, we have institutional investors as well, because this is a product that is more suited to their strategy. So we had it in Fund 1, and we're now kind of, at the finish line with an institution for Fund 2. But this is definitely a product that is more suited for larger institutions.
Okay, sounds good. So with investment, journey only starts, right? When you sign your first check to the company, that's not the end in the journey. Many people who do not understand venture think that the venture capitalist job is just to invest and pray hard for this company to succeed, right? You and I know that this is a hard work. And for me, frankly, this is the most interesting work. I always tell my partners that I came to do this business to work with companies, to sit on their boards, not because of my ego, but just because of my experience, knowledge, which is essentially knowledge transfer from me, who built like a lot of tech companies before, to those who is doing it now. What I don't like the most in my profession is fundraising. So if somebody told me that you should also fundraise what you're investing in, I would probably think twice for accepting this role of being a co-founder in the venture fund. I'm kidding, of course, but it's still like the mostly boring part of my work, at least. So you are sitting on, I just counted your board sits in your LinkedIn profile, 11 boards. Probably it doesn't mention all.
You have some more.
How many?
It's quite a lot, but I think it's important to realize that, as you said, when we signed the check, it's just the beginning. And by the way, we look at it as a partnership, as a marriage. I'm not sitting across the table. We're at the same table. We're at the same side. Once we're on board, it's our job together to make sure that this can be the best that it can be. And it's true what you say, that when you're in this business or in my business, you see a lot. So we did, hundreds of deals, because the best founders, they raise almost every year. So it's hundreds of deals and thousands of deals that we didn't end up doing. And you see everything. So a founder, he really sees his own business. And if it's a serial founder, it's many businesses, but you can never get to that scale. It's a lot of experience. It's a lot of transactional experience. It's a lot of things that actually don't necessarily go the way that you thought, that you kind of carry these scars on your back. And as you said, it's my job to make sure these mistakes are not repeated with other founders, that if there's anything that I can do to help them navigate this very, challenging role, also from a personal growth perspective, it's important, because many times the CEO needs to also grow in his abilities, and he's exposed to new challenges that he never thought he was going to have as a leader in this business. So for us, it's definitely part of the role, but the role does change over time. So we come in early, and we know, how to define the KPIs to the next round, how the budget should look like, how to onboard leadership and management teams, how to do corporate governance on the board, how to navigate and create round dynamic, and to negotiate and to bring on board people who can lead the next round, who are partners of ours, who've done this with us before and had a good experience. We're also good at structure, everything you need, from the AOA, the founders agreement, everything. If you had safes, it was a mess, captives, everything. We know how to do everything and really set the company to success with raising from a very large international fund. That's not going to be the issue. But there's also a lot of soft skills, a lot of work.
Yeah, indeed. You speak of like mostly now about like functional, operational, financial techniques, right?
No,
But board is all about inspiration, right? Board is also about taking stress from the founder, relaxing, and letting founder to enjoy, right? Not only to stress. So I want to ask you, so probably like 11 boards I mentioned, so probably you're like sitting at 20 boards. I'm sitting at 10, and I just find it pretty intense, actually. So my question, what's the good board? So you may name the company, but you may not name the company if you don't want. But just tell us what the good board looks like. I mean, what is good about your best board? What is that? Why this board, the particular board, is the best one? And an opposite one, what makes the board really like crappy and bad? I mean, also I want to see an example of how you deal with that. Is I just have this experience, some boards I love to go. I want like next day to be the same board. Some boards I go and I just prepare mentally myself, like meditating a little bit before I enter the board because I know this will be like a very hard exercise for me. So I'm sure you have the same. So how we handle it? What's good? What's bad for you?
Okay, I won't stick to a single company because I think it's like a combination of so many different experiences, and I want to kind of bring forward maybe a few things that I think, are good to remember and some things that I think could be inhibiting to a successful board. I think first and foremost, there is a reason we're coming together. It's not just to go through the motions, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
There are really like decisions to be made, and there are many opinions and many around the room and many advice that can be shared. A lot of experience that can be leveraged. And I think that my expectation is when we come to the room is that people are prepared and people are, able to voice their opinions as well, because that's the whole meaning. There are decisions to be made. There are influence that can be shared. And it goes to all the board members and potentially the chairman, but also the CEO or the founding team, because sometimes they don't really want to hear. They don't really want to hear. They want to come and say something. They want you to say whatever you want to say, but they already made up their mind. And I think it's a big problem, especially in early stage, because the market can move. You're getting feedback from customers, but you're not hearing it properly. You're not able.
Most unexperienced founders, first-time founders, they don't see any reason to have a board, right? I mean, they think that the board is something what is coming with investors as a like audit function, as a controlling function, right? They do not really see board to be the advisors, but see more, I need this board to sell something to investors, right? I hate these boards, I really like the boards where founders coming with a problem, right? And maybe with some options for solution, right? But then the board is like discussing it. Yeah.
I think, again, I don't know. I can't speak to any director. There are many directors that come maybe just to see, to check the box and see how the company is doing. But I think especially in the early stages, like if I didn't want to be there, I probably wouldn't invest. If I don't want to be a partner, if I don't want to be able to hear what you're going through, and let me help you in any way that I can to make sure that you're better, then I probably shouldn't invest, because it's just going to be like, what are we doing here? We're just wasting everybody's time. So I think, by the way, even when we do the due diligence, we always tell founders, like, I'm doing due diligence on you, but you can also do it on me. You can ask other companies. If I sit on the board, if I'm even at sometime an observer, does it add value to you? Is it good that I'm there? Would you rather me not be there? You can ask around about me. And if you think it's going to add value to you and your team, you want me there, then maybe we can be partners. Of course, I need to do my checks as well. But if you want me to invest and you don't want me at the table, probably not going to invest, because it just means to me that you just want someone to write you a check and you just want to do whatever you want to do, but you don't know what you don't know. And you can't even realize that you don't know what you don't know. You don't want to listen. So like, why should I even be there? I don't want to be in a place that I feel I can open your eyes or add value, and you just have, an agenda and it doesn't matter what I'm going to say. And by the way, I'm happy for people to listen to what I have to say and say, you know what? I checked, I researched, I investigated, and I decided to do something else. And that's also fine. But be thinkers, be people who are constantly trying to kind of challenge and not be prone to groupthink, or not like already know the answer before you walk in the room. Be open to changing your mind. Be open to other opinions and other thoughts.
Do you play sometimes the role of like devil advocate when you just
yes,
push your?
I do, and I tell them, I tell them we're going to do an exercise, and I tell them, by the way, it's not necessarily how I think, because I'm like an optimist, because otherwise I'd probably be in this business. But let me ask you the questions. Let me challenge you. And I did it just recently when I had a company, and we already invested. They're doing another round, and I brought them to a new customer, and throughout the thing, they told the customer how the customer can add value to the startup. And I was sitting there, I'm like, what? Like, you need to tell them, I understand your business, and this is how I can add value to you.
Yeah.
You're sitting there and telling the customer, oh yeah, I'm not doing that today. That can add a lot of value to me. That was like, that was crazy. So you see that sometimes. So sometimes you can really perfect your pitch. You can understand that you're coming with a narrative that your customers might not want to hear. You constantly need to think about who's sitting in the room with you, and that pitch or that duration can change. But you really need to understand who you're talking to and why does that make sense for them? How can you add value to others? So there are always like these different things that can come up. But I think definitely part of our scorecard is as a founder that is agile, from that mind perspective, that is looking and constantly searching for feedback, for more thoughts, for more thought leadership, for more experience. It's definitely something. It's someone who asks questions, right? It's someone who is asking, what's the problem? Like, where are the problems that I can add value? Where I can add value. So this is definitely some traits or characteristics that we really look for in founders.
I have a question for you, maybe a tricky one. When was it the last time when you fired your founder/CEO? And what was the reason for that?
Well, I personally didn't fire one. Personally. No, I think, again, I said this before. When I go into
you remember there was a famously known plate behind the seat of the chair of Mike Morris, a legendary partner at Sequoia. It is never too late to fire your CEO. and founders were delivering their pitches and was getting the term sheet signed in front of that very saying. So I would probably, they should have been a little bit scared.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's really dependent. I think personally that investors that choose to fire the CEOs, it's a specific profile of an investor. And again, sometimes it's worthwhile. There are, by the way, many investors that do turnaround situations where this is the bread and butter of the business. Personally, I'm coming in an early stage. If I don't think the founding team can execute, I'm not going to invest. I'm not going to fall in love with their technology and say, oh, this is fantastic technology. I'm just going to get rid of the team and find somebody else to lead the business.
Although this model exists, I know many people in the Valley would do it perfectly.
Of course.
They think that they're saving founders because founders are really great on ideation and really crappy on execution. So they take it from the hands of founders.
I open with that.
And I asked this guy, Steve, I don't want to give his last name. He's very famously known investing in B2B SaaS here from like early 2000s. And he was one of the first investors in Salesforce that helped him make his fortune. Anyway, he was saying, I'm saving their fortune. I said, did you ask them? Do they want the fortune? Maybe they want to continue their business, but I don't care,
Well, I say it's a business, but it's a choice. I can say, it happened. Generally, it happened in unison or in kind of like a mutually agreed decision with the entire board and the CEO. And generally what happens is not that he's completely kicked out. Generally, he stays on. Sometimes, you do a go-to-market strategy and you bring a very, very senior figure that's maybe more fit to lead from an operationally or revenue generating perspective. Or if you want to IPO, perhaps that's like a good kind of shift. But But I think in most cases, the founder is really breathing light that inspires the employees, the mid-management, and is really ingrained in the DNA of the company. And it needs to be something very, very drastic to do like a coup on him and fire him. Of course, I mean, again, if he steals from the company, I don't know, like whatever. But if nothing happened, there are many instances where the founder can grow and become CEO the company needs, perhaps with mentorship, or perhaps with coaching, perhaps with getting kicked towards towards those goals by the board. But if there is a real need to change a CEO, it's a very, very delicate situation. It needs to be in a way that doesn't create a terrible ripple effect within the organization and other people decide to leave. You need to remember that there are many, by the way, early customers where he's the key owner of the relationship.
Also product.
To be counterproductive. It needs to be really thought through, not trivial decision, very difficult. And I think, again, there are ways to do it. It needs to be mindful. These are people who gave their whole life. This is their baby. One of my founders said, you have so many investments and I have just this one. And I told him it's not fair to say it because, as I said, every investment is a partnership. Every investment I feel is like my own kid too. So it's not fair to say, but they feel like that. This is all I have. I took out a second mortgage on the house. I don't see my kids, don't see my wife. I don't do anything. I fly.
It's long journey, right? It's like
this
10, 15 years.
My life. So it needs to be done in a way that's really constructive to the business and to the team. Very, it's an art. It is.
If you ask me what I'm mostly fascinated with about like founders like Yoni, your husband and partner, or Mark Zuckerberg, I may compare Yoni with Mark for sure. And I would say that this is a transformation that these people go through their journey. Because when you start a company with like your co-founder, there are only two people. When you end up at the public ringing the bell at IPO, this could just be a company with thousands and thousands of people. And you have to grow alongside. I mean, if you have a mentality of a big company CEO with a small company, it won't work. If you have a mentality of small company CEO with a big company, it doesn't work, right? So you need to transform yourself. You always have to adjust yourself to the size and complexity. Because the level of complexity is growing. You could not manage your small startup in the way you manage a middle size or a large one. And that's the reason why companies are changing, usually like revenue officers, CFOs, like the entire executive team, right? Because those who can do it from zero to a product, from product to $1 million IRR, from 1 million to 10, from 10 to 100, from 100 to 1 billion. These are all different people, right? And you as a founder have to stay the same, right? You are always like in different shoes, and it's really extremely hard. So only very exceptional, very few people can adjust themselves towards this, like this feeling who you are now. So you are not who you are. You're always like what company needs, and that's so difficult. Yeah. So I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think, and I love these journeys, alongside with people who are doing it. Yeah. So maybe just to say a few words about how you envision an evolution of your product, which you built and you still have this R&D team, and your business overall, say in 5 years. What iAngels should be in 5 years? How would you compare yourself with the competitive landscape? So what you are?
Didn't think about what I was going to say necessarily, but it's interesting because a lot of times, because I'm also a founder, I just met somebody that I haven't met in like maybe 8 years. It was actually a member of our R&D team in the early days, and he asked me, "So what's the end play? Are you going to sell the company?" And I'm like, "No, this is my life. I love what I do. I love what I do. I wake up every day with energy. I love working with founders. I love asking, what are going to be the problems when my 5 children are going to be my age, how does the world going to look like? What's going to be a commodity and what's going to be challenge? And who are the founders that are going to change the world? And this is what excites me every day. So I'm definitely where I need to be. I definitely want to grow this business. I love my team. We always say we have
billion dollars in 5 years, $5 billion,
more $1 billion. We're at
$10 billion.
500. No, we're at 500 million.
Yeah.
Listen, if you wouldn't ask me 5 years
I'm gonna
ago,
double in 5 years.
Yeah, if you were gonna ask me 5 years ago, I would have said for sure. But we went through COVID and financial crisis and judiciary reform in Israel and political instability and war and everything. And nobody could have known. Nobody could have known. So I'm happy to really grow the business. I think we have something very special and very unique in our landscape. We have an amazing team. We like to call it the special forces of venture in Israel. Everyone is really striking in their ability and the value that they add every day to different parts of the business. So we really we're very, very excited to take it to the next level. We want to see more institutions get involved. Now there's that program to incentivize Israeli institutions to invest in Israeli funds. And I think that's really going to open another door to more incentivization to commit. So I think it's going to be great, because I think kind of the pitfalls was that Israeli institutions were not incentivized to invest in Israel, and they would go invest elsewhere. So there really can be something that kind of keeps the fuel going, and really is the I don't want to say the soldiers, but really our role is that Israeli economy stays strong, that Israel innovation is kicking and stays at the front head of global technology and innovation. There's so much that we can do and create. And I want to be part of the businesses that really grow to be large and sustainable household names and are going to change the world. That's what we want to do.
Awesome. And I think it's time to switch to another section of our discussion, which is Israeli ecosystem, startup nation, technology overall. My friend Ilyas Tribulayev, who is a professor at Stanford Business School, who is studying venture business for over 20 years, he came up with an interesting slide recently where he's showing foreign-born unicorn founders in the US, and he's showing different nations. For the largest nation in terms of unicorn founders outside of the built in the US, but foreign-born immigrants to the US is India. So I recall there are around 200 founders out of India, or co-founders. Number 2 is, I think, China, but much less than that. I think less than 100. And then number 3 is occasionally Israeli entrepreneurs who moved to the United States, which is amazing because Israel is so small compared to India and China, right? And there are so many talented people who built great companies. So although it is happening and still happening, and I hope it will happen in even accelerated pace over next years, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities on the Israeli market going forward? How did it, this war and this geopolitics shape Israel? You have this Abraham Accords up and running. Fortunately, with Trump administration, it will extend. Do you see any potential there? And risks, of course, risks and challenges. How would you see them?
So from a geography perspective, we have to understand Israel is very, very small. We always innovate for other markets. The problems that we're looking to solve are not here. And it does require adaptation, because it needs that, we need to put our head in the market that we're targeting and think, what is their problem? Not as what is my problem, not how willing am I to adopt the technology or to test run it, but how will they, onboard? So it's always that mindset. So it makes organizations global from day one. You
Mhm.
have to have like your go-to-market strategy is never
You,
Israel. And by the way,
yeah.
you
You
do
have to
have
go overseas all the time. Yeah, you have to go
all the
to explore the market. Mhm.
all the time. And by the way, you're even if you have traction in Israel and you're coming to investors, it's generally
Nobody cares.
discounted. Yeah, nobody
Yeah,
cares.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, I have 5 customers and they're paying. Great. If they're local,
Your
it's
multiple to revenue is 0
yeah,
if your
yeah,
capital in Israel.
yeah. Because what? It's your friend. It's like because everybody knows everybody. So it's very important to understand like the mindset of an Israeli founder, and it's not. I mean, it's generally a very common life journey to move to be closer to where your market is. So
Mhm.
many times, founders end up moving and could be relatively in early stages after raising an A round, take a lot of risk. They pull their family out and their children. They move to be closer to market, and I think it's kind of built in the program. Like people and investors really kind of expect that. And especially in a year like this past year, to even have a further risk reduction, you need to move. Like you move to be closer to your market and then, be in a situation where you can travel and you're like more free to run the business and meet customers and not subject to any kind of external risk. So I think like we really need to remember that. And of course that it is a very, very small country. We actually have, again, I don't know if like recent stats, but like the number 1 engineers per capita, the number 1 unicorns per capita. You're talking about unicorns in the US that are originally from Israel. But from a unicorn per capita perspective, Israel is on the lead because there are a lot of unicorns in a very, very, very small country. So a lot of value created. I think with the Abraham Accords and the possibility of opening up a region to our east, I think it's very interesting because they are really trying to create strategic alliances in a way where Israel can provide the innovation and the IP, and they can really support from a delivery perspective, bringing more people either by the way from India or from China, from different places in the east to the Emirates, to potentially Saudi, and have more of kind of like troops on the ground with Israeli innovation. There's a lot of Israeli innovation in sectors that region is actually a fantastic region to penetrate, like environmental tech, water tech, food tech. They're very open to these kinds of innovations and are constantly searching for this kind of innovation. So I think it kind of opens another region, but founders usually have kind of a single go-to market. They raise less than their counterparts in America, and they're more perhaps they need to be more efficient with their fundraising, and they generally have like one go. Like they need to go for one direction, and they have to focus, and then they're going to have to do another raise. So it's very difficult to choose and go like in different direction. I think as more programs are crafted to incentivize talent to come east.
Are there many of those?
Sorry?
Are there many of those programs, like incentives? Maybe you can name a few.
Well, I don't know, but like I'm aware of different programs of providing really matching or in-kind services that can amount to quite a lot of money. And so if you have raised less, that can double your lifeline. So it's interesting, and I think for specific sectors, it's even more interesting to consider it. That maybe they're more open, maybe it's closer. So maybe it's possible to go more times. Like now, again, with flights, it could cost you like $2,000 or $2,500 to go to New York from America, from Israel, for a single ticket. And to the Emirates, it costs you $400. So perhaps if you're looking for customers, if you're looking for partners, if you're looking for investment, it could be also something to consider. And I think there's a lot of value there that has not been yet unlocked. A lot of potential for the region, and a lot of kind of this notion of how we're making this into a new Middle East where we can be, an economic superpower, where we can work together, where we can add value, where we can adopt technology. So I think there's like this very great and inspiring notion about it. I think it's still very kind of in our heads because it has been for so many years that we're going west. But I think we'll see dynamic, we'll see different things change over the next 5 years, of course, as the economic partnerships between the regions continues to grow and thrive and present new opportunity. I think it's definitely could be a material shift. And I think it's also, again, sector dependent. So many times, for example, in fintech, people go to Europe first because if you're selling to a financial institution, it's a more, distributed environment and you can onboard a lot of new customers in relatively kind of condensed, and you don't need to be, if you go to the US, it's more.
So most of the entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs still buy the first ticket to go overseas to the US, right? Most of Israeli, you say that there is no market in Israel, you need to go somewhere, right? So most of them prefer to go the biggest market, right? Is the US
market. Yeah. Again, if it's fintech, they could think about Europe. They can think about how they penetrate and they onboard different European.
Do you see people going to China? Do you see people going to India?
Not so much.
Indonesia?
Because I think if you do have IP, there's a risk of IP threat, like IP theft, or like the next day there's going to be the Chinese copycat, and it's material spend because you raise money, you have investors, and you want to try to avoid that. And I think it's also very difficult to navigate from a regulatory perspective unless you have a local partner that understands the language and the barriers and the people who are kind of pushing the buttons and moving things along. It could be very challenging for an Israeli founder that doesn't necessarily have a partner there. So it's definitely something that less Israelis are looking for. And as you said, they're looking for big markets and big problems. So it's kind of traditionally been America.
Look, also, I think one of the advantages of Israeli startups is like that there are not that many companies that go public, end up going public, right? And for investors, exit is the second most important thing after investing, right? So in most of good exits, profitable exits come through M&A, right? When a big company is buying a smaller startup. And Israel is well known for M&A, extended M&A tradition with the US companies. Most of these companies you worked for, like IBM, SAP, they ended up being in Israel through M&As, right? They buy startups, and that's how they blend their R&D teams there. So I just heard that's a little bit of a funny joke that the US largest corporates, they treat Israel as one of the US states in terms of M&A. So buying company in Georgia or in California is the same for them as buying company in Israel, right? Because they have natural path. Do you see it changing? Do you see more Indian companies, largest, or Chinese companies, or Turkish companies, or others are coming to buy Israeli startups? So it's still not a trend.
Turkish, not so much, but I can say, it is true. Traditionally, they've acquired companies in Israel, and around those acquisitions, created many times the first R&D center outside of their home country, outside of the US. And by the way, when they had a team here, then they even became more acquisitive because it started, had boots on the ground. So they
knowledge of the market,
exactly, synergies and more active because they already had offices here. So it's easy to create synergies. I think, by the way, perhaps, and it's worthwhile kind of exploring or researching, there is companies who were backed by government and received IP grants for R&D that are based on IP. They had a limitation about taking IP out of the country altogether. So perhaps this was even motivation to keep kind of IP in the teams here and not just be kind of a tech acqui-hire or just get the founding team or just get the tech and get rid of everyone here. So it was really a mission to keep the offices and to keep the people here engaged and involved. I think, again, this past year is not necessarily indicative, but people do feel more comfortable. And again, this is like years in the making of like buying companies here. So and founders are creating bigger companies. So if, way back when, Israel was kind of always regarded as the startup nation, but very quick to exit because founders didn't have the skill set to scale businesses internationally, to be CEOs.
They were also very hungry for cash, right? They wanted to improve their life.
And now there's a lot of learned, skills and more like this paid forward type of mentality where founders who are successful, they're going back and they're building bigger businesses, or they're becoming angels, as you said, and supporting younger founders in their journey. And there are more like large companies. You see it also on the acquisition side. You see much more meaty, huge acquisitions that are happening here. And also companies that are going to be either have already gone through that journey or are considering to IPO, which is not traditionally necessarily has been the skill set of the Israeli entrepreneur. So I think it really showcases the maturity of Israeli founders and the Israeli entrepreneurial landscape, and their ability to build big businesses, not to sell off IP and have another large corporate kind of enjoy the enterprise value created, but create the actual enterprise value themselves, and they look at it as a challenge. So I think there's definitely a different level of maturity amongst the entrepreneurial landscape here.
Absolutely. So if there is one thing to change, you have like a wish list. Number one, what would you improve in Israeli venture and startup ecosystem? One thing
that I have the ability to improve, or like necessarily that I just want.
You have a magic button. You press a button and then it's all done.
Sorry again.
You have now a magic button, a wish list. You press a button, and then this magic button releases your wish, whatever it is. What would that be?
I want there to be no war.
No war. Okay. So you think that no war will help?
You said a magic button. I don't need to do it myself. I think, by the way,
you're right. I mean, but
there's some fantastic things happening here. This cannot cannot be over our heads. We want to do business. We want to go outside. We want people to be back. We want people to be engaged in work and in creating value. We don't want this to be over our heads.
We all as people, and I'm Israeli as you are, and I have extended family members there. We all really fight for peace by any means. I mean, we want peace, and I want peace for Israel and my family, your family. I mean, extended families. Yet I see sometimes when you look into history, after every war, Israel was booming. Every time post-war showed up, best companies, best technology, best innovation. And I was arguing with one of my partners from a different fund, from European fund. He said, it will kill your Israeli ecosystem. It's like this war. I said, no way. I mean, Israel will come stronger, and this will be a golden era of Israeli startups. So we are gonna double down on that because of that very fact. Because we know history, and historically, it's true, right? So I'm truly with you on this war side. It should be peace because we all love peace, but for technology and business, sometimes, and I know it's awkward to say, war is a booster of innovation and technology.
I think COVID was also a booster. Any time of challenges, real challenges, people get all of a sudden this and they innovate. We see it already happening. People are not waiting to the end, because again, we have no control over it. But people are already working on initiatives and innovations. And I think it's definitely going to be one of those vintages that are going to go down, in the books of history as one of the most successful, promising, inspiring,
I totally
trajectory changes.
hustlers. Yeah. Indeed.
Vintage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go like very few things outside of business. So I just wanted to say, like, you have 5 kids, and then I said, no, you have more kids. You have a lovely partner who, I mean, for every smart woman is also another kid. So 6. No, you also have iAngels, that's 7. You now have like 15 companies sitting on the board. You have many kids. But you are famously known as one of these entrepreneurs who can manage so many things, and you are raising 5 kids, right? So how is it? I mean, how can you work-life balance? I mean, with all this you do, I mean, one of the top tier super angel entrepreneurs in Israel, and also raising 5 kids. I could not understand that. I mean, how this is ever possible? I mean, what's the secret?
I have no secrets. I'm happy to share it all. Like,
Let's do it.
I keep anything to myself. By the way, I'm like, I love this because like many times when I'm asked, I'm happy, and I tell some of my girlfriends, I'm like, I'll tell you everything you need to know. I tell my employees that just started, building a family, stick around, you're good. Like, we're gonna take you through the entire journey. I think it starts really with the partnership at home. Yoni and I, we've been together since we were 20. So it's been 23 years. We are true partners. And we, in many cases, like you said, the CEO needs to evolve. We are the co-CEOs of this house, and we have grown together professionally and personally over all these years. And we are the best friends, the best partners in life and in business, each other's sounding board. And I can't even say that it's like, it doesn't mean that we need to have like an equal load at the house, because like I don't even measure it that way. And by the way, being a mom is very important to me. So if someone can say, great, you fly off and you're constantly traveling and building $1 billion business, and like Yoni's going to raise the kids, and you're going to see them like 80% less, I'm not going to choose that, because I like the fact that I can do both, and I like the fact that I'm a very meaningful and inspiring figure in their life. That helps them, with anything. And I like to say that I never pick up. Like, and my kids used to ask me, like, why do you never pick up from kindergarten or from school? And I say, it's not true. I do on Friday, but that's not how I measure my motherhood. And I think that I aspire to be there at the most important intersections of life. I aspire to be there, when they're down or when they're up and they need advice. And I aspire to be there at what I like to call money time. And people ask me, how do you define money time? And I say, I decide. And it could be being there for a Hanukkah kindergarten party at, 9 a.m. on the middle of the week. But it's important for me to be there. So I'll be there, and then I'll go to work. Or I even will tell Yoni that, next in 2 months, his daughter, our daughter is going to be in the rhythmic gymnastics nationals, and he can't fly. And I say, you can fly if you have to, but just know that I think it's important. And we kind of always open each other's eyes to some of these things. And we like to call it like creating core memories. And being there in very important milestones. This past weekend, I had this great idea because I saw online that on the 25th of January, 25, you can see all the planets align in the night sky.
Wow.
There, and it's supposed to be a very an amazing appearance. Yeah. And I told him, you're taking the 3 boys. I found him like where he's driving to the south in Mitzperamon in Israel.
Yeah.
And I told him, I can go. I can also do it, but I think it's really cool if it will be you.
Yes.
It will be this like board trip. And he says, like, you always have these elaborate ideas, and then I have to do it. But it's really about how do you manage. And that night when they came back, so our middle middle child, Ari, who's like very much into the stars, says it takes in his head not one core memory, but two core memories, because this was like one of the most amazing nights of his life. And that's how you do it. And you can't be there all the time for anything, but you need to be there when you need to be there. And you can be off, like it's okay, you can miss, but if you know when are the important times to, to do special things and to help really form that character, similar to how we started the conversation of what shaped me, what do I remember, what would somebody say about me, and I have a lot of memories. And I think we are very inspiring figures, and we are people that our children, seek us for guidance and advice on anything. And we have a very open communication. I hope this will always be the case. And we have quite a range. So I have a 14-year-old boy, Adam, then 12-year-old Anne, 10-year-old Ari, 7-year-old Alex, and 4-year-old Amy. So it's also quite a range, and they all need different things.
And who knows, maybe there will be more to come.
Sorry?
Who knows, maybe there will be more to come.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm happy. I always say, I say to my kids, the heart is full, the house is full, the car is full. And then my car had to go into the shop, and I got, by accident, like from the shop, like an 8-seater. And then my goes, oh my God, Mom, there are 8-seaters? You could have another kid. I'm like, no, no. But we're very happy. We're very tight. The kids are good friends. And I think the foundation to it all is like very good and strong communication, being an optimist, having
I like what you said about memories. That's how I remember my parents, through like events, right? You do not remember your parents. My parents passed away, unfortunately, long ago. I do remember them as spots, white spots or bright spots. It's not like continuous, it's like spots. And that's how I think my kids will remember me. Or we did this with that, or we did that with that, or
let me match and raise. Let's say that our kids are going to see a continuous line, and they're going to have.
Yeah. But over time, you just remember.
But there is going to be a continuous line, because I think, again, and I'm sure your kids say the same thing about you. I think my kids, and I hope they will say that I was always there for them. And
you're right.
Then it's continuous.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't see it from that angle, but you're right. I raised 6 kids, which I always give all credits to my wife for sure. But that's amazing, really. Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to imagine a man in this shoes,
I mean, by the way, I tell him I always tell him, and he's happy to give it. He's a very generous guy. So he's like, and we live very, very crazy lives. He's running eToro. I was there, from day one, from the previous startup, I was there. So everything, decision-making and a lot of things that we went through together are make us like really, really good partners.
Yeah, that's amazing, really. And I'm sure that your kids love it. I mean, they will remember you also by what you did, not only by what and how you spent time with them, and that you were always nearby, but also with what inspired you. I believe that's important,
Times,
your inspiration is something what can come to be their inspirations as well. Yeah.
Many times.
That's how things
even
work,
when they ask me why I don't pick up, it's not because I say it's not important. It's because I say Mommy's working and Mommy's happy to work. It's something that really defines me and is important for me.
And your happiness is their happiness as well, right? You could not be an unhappy mom raising happy kids. I mean, that's not possible.
Biggest compliment is my kids. They ask me if they grow up, if they can work for iAngels. And I was like, I told them, maybe you want to work for eToro. And it was really, really nice to hear unsolicited that they think that it's inspiring and something that they would love to learn more about. And and sometimes, someone once told me, you probably are such an inspiration for your daughters. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm hoping that I'm an inspiration for my boys too, because this is
Sure.
how they go on in life and choose a partner in life, and realize that, their partner in life, she can be career driven and she could be a great mom. And it doesn't, and perhaps this is something that will be important for them as well when they choose a partner. So I think it needs to inspire both men
Absolutely.
and women.
I totally agree. Okay, last question on my side, and this was my longest podcast ever. There were 11, but this was an amazing discussion, and I really loved it. And I want to continue with you more. There will be episode number 2. I will invite you for sure because there were so many topics we didn't touch. You are an entrepreneur who is building future, right? Because venture, you said rightly, you must be an optimist because if you are not, future does not exist and is not as bright as you want it to be, right? So how would you think of technological future, say by 2030? Will AI replace us, you and me, in our shoes of venture capitalists? Will it eliminate jobs, create more jobs? Anything you think is a trend, big trend, which would shape our life, like this deep seek thing, which everybody was talking about for the last 2 days, that crashed $600 billion in market cap of Nvidia. So one thing can change many things in this world, right? If you talk about technology. So what do you think will come?
Well, I have to say that from an AI perspective, I always keep it in mind in every conversation. I see many times companies and they say, oh, we can do this and we can do this much more efficiently and we can even do it with AI or whatever. And I think to myself, in 2 years, you don't need that product because the AI can do it by itself. And many times I challenge the need or the sustainability of the business with that in mind. Because I do think that there's going to be a huge revolution, a huge evolution in how we develop new technologies more efficiently. It doesn't mean that people are going to be not required. And I see it in many organizations that adopt AI. It's all of a sudden with the same workforce, they can do 10 times more. 10 times more sales, 10 times more customer success, 10 times more adoption, write code faster. So things are going to accelerate much faster. I don't think that it means that they're going to retire 90% of the workforce, but they're going to move 10 times faster. And that requires an understanding of how the world is going to look like, how fast products are going to be pushed out there, how personalized your experience is going to be in this world. And I think that the big gap is not going to be how you and I are going to be not relevant, but what kind of changes has the education system made to make sure that our children that meet the workforce in 20 years are set up for success in a completely different work future. So future of work. So I think this is sometimes things that I think about. I'm actually not an investor in tech. It's not something, or in edutech. It's edutech. It's not something that is really our core. But I think that's going to be the big jump because everybody's talking about we're millennials. We're millennials. We're like the last decade or of people who were raised in our work life by more traditional, industry leaders and managers. And as the new generations are coming into the workforce, I think it's going to look much different. But again, AI is going to really enhance the ability of companies to develop much faster solutions, to create much more tailored solutions, to advance medicine and personalized health. In the past, for anything really, really complicated, you used to think, okay, we need a supercomputer for that. Now you're not. You're going to leverage all the data and you're going to have infinite nodes and AI is going to calculate. So your decision-making process can be much faster. FDA can be much faster. There's so many things that I think can happen with adopting this technology. But I like to say that with great power comes great responsibility, and it will be really on us to be able to kind of control and leverage the technology to our advantage and not against humanity. And I hope that I hope that it's going to be possible, because I think excitement and curiosity really drives people to explore, tremendous amount of possibilities. And we have to kind of remember that there might be casualties there. But I'm very optimistic. I would love to think that in the future, a lot of the illnesses that exist today are not going to be relevant anymore. That people can choose how to extend life if they want to in health, and to be more to continue to be productive. Yeah. Because today the retirement age is is like, I don't know, in your 70s, and there's like a decreased levels of health and productivity thereafter. But maybe you can be be productive and healthy until the very end. So it's very interesting. I always tell my kids that when someone passes or when something happens, I always tell them, don't worry, I'm going to live forever. And people ask me, you really think you're going to live forever? I don't know if I'm going to live forever, but I think we are already in a situation where it's possible to think that we will have very, very long lives in very good health, for much more than we anticipated. And the world will also have to adapt to that, because then, pension will look different, support, everything is going to
totally agree. Yeah. I'm well convinced that there is already a human being who is born who will live over, say, 300 years. Maybe you never say forever, but who will be similar capacity, human capacity, or over capacity, which is unimaginable for now, in 200 years, feeling like he's still a young man or young woman. But I also agree. I mean, you said about nice, really perspective on the education. I think if you ask me what to choose, where AI can advance, I would not even choose medicine. I would choose education. I think AI teacher could be a perfect mentor, a perfect teacher, a perfect supporter of education process. And with that, you can bring best possible and imaginable education platform to billions of kids who are lacking any education today, right? And there are so many Einsteins of this world who are not going there just because they have no choice, because they were not educated in their childhood, right? I mean, that high potential. So you unlock this potential through education. So you unlock it for the entire mankind. And it's even more important than unlocking the aging or longevity, because that's where the full potential is. Kids who could not get the best education possible, and with AI teacher, with AI platform, they may be inspired and guided through the learning process to become next generation of Einsteins. And that's where the biggest potential is.
In all the sectors of life. Because, for example, when I was a developer, we used to do Scrum coding. So it means that you're taking tiny tasks that are independent tasks that you can be contributor to many, many different lines of code or tracks of code. And I said to myself, it's amazing, because in the future, you can work for many, many, many different companies, not for one. And you can do Scrum coding, and you can take blocks and develop them. And this is really what happens today. And also with open source. And it happens to the same is with blockchain or with digital assets. You can be compensated from different types of employers by different types of currencies or crypto. And you can work and exchange and be, engage in e-commerce in different parts of the world with different types of currencies.
Absolutely.
It happens with financial literacy, like Itor is promoting. It happens with our kind of model of democratizing or kind of creating an appeal to this asset class, this variant asset class, across the world. And it will hit also education. I saw just recently, Harvard issued 12 free online courses, anywhere from introduction to computer science to introduction to AI and machine learning, to technology for people who are not coming from technology, 12 different courses in Harvard. the same Microsoft. So, and I sent it to my kid. I sent it to my 14-year-old kid, and I told him choose two. He said he's going to do introduction to gaming, to learning how to code games, and introduction to AI and machine learning. And he said he's going to bring a friend. And I said, this is amazing because you can be like a master of something, and you can do one degree that's like from Harvard and Microsoft and like MIT and Columbia and Technion and whatever. And this is going to be how you recruit talent. It's not going to be, okay, I went through this specific program. It could be the best in suite, the best of breed, of a composition of everything, the world has to offer. And you can do that today. So it's that will bring, technology literacy to the world.
I totally agree. Okay, so that was a conversation with my friend and amazing person, super angel, super iAngel of Israel, and amazing mom and friend, Mor Assia, who is a founding partner of iAngels and invested in so many great companies, and a very wise person and leader, and my really my inspiration for today, for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So this was Victor Orlovski and our podcast, Ventures from the Valley, brought to you by R136 Ventures. Listen to us on all the platforms and join us for the next conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ventures from the Valley is brought to you by R136 Ventures. To find out more about R136 Ventures and how we scale mid to late stage startups by unlocking their true potential through investment, visit r136.vc. We will be back soon. In the meantime, make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. On behalf of our team here at R136 Ventures, thanks for listening.